This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I am going to call the Public Works and Protection meeting to order for Tuesday, July 20th. Since we don't have a chair in attendance, we need nominations to elect a chair for this meeting. Anybody want to make a nomination?
I'll make a nomination that Allison Williams be chair tonight.
Okay, any other nominations?
I'll second that.
All right, roll call, please.
Allison Williams,
Here.
Jake Krieger,
Here.
Joanne Euclid,
Here.
and Gary Paul and John Burnett are excused.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Action on the agenda for today.
I'll move to approve it.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Action on the minutes from the meeting on June 1st, 2021.
Move to approve.
So both Jay and I were gone. Can we second it? Okay,
I'll second it.
perfect. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda. Do we have any public that would like to speak for anything not on the agenda tonight? Anything not on the agenda? Okay, moving on. 7A, action on Class A beer, Class A liquor license request for Amba India Bazaar LLC, DBA Amba India Bazaar. And I think that goes to Chris.
Thank you. So the owners are requesting a Class A beer, Class A liquor license for the store. All licensing and payment requirements have been met. As a point of information, the owners also own India Bhavan.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions, concerns?
I'll move to approve the Class A beer and Class A liquor license request for Amba India Bazaar LLC.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. 7B, action on Class B beer license request for Blades and Boards LLC, DBA Blades and Boards. Chris.
So Blades and Boards is located at 303 Bay Park Square, 201C, and they're seeking a Class B beer license for their new establishment. All fees and licensing requirements have been met. We do have one of the owners on the go-to meeting, and we also have a representative in the audience if you have any questions.
One question I might have is, where is Simon's on this? Is that fine? Because at this point, I don't believe there's an establishment with any, serving any liquor within the mall, if I'm correct.
They are, if I can talk, is that okay?
That'd be great.
Okay. Yes, the Simon Group is fully okay with it, pending your approval. Just needed to meet the city's licensing and approval. They are okay with it. I have that in writing. It's in our lease.
I wish that the chief was here. I'd like to hear, I've been hearing some things about other, about problems around the Bay Park Square area with other things, and I'm just curious if there's any concerns about additionally selling liquor within there.
So So it is solely beer and ciders. It is not any hard liquor glasses or anything of that sort. I will tell you, I do have 2 other locations, been doing this both in Wausau and in Oshkosh for over 4.5 years. Never had an incident. Not only am I, but my team is very well versed in 2 drinks. That is it. What we like to establish, and there's a very different, every axe house is a little bit different, but Blades and Boards is all about family. And so the reason we allow beer and ciders is because when that family of 4, for example, their 14 and 16-year-old want to come in with mom and dad and throw axes, they can bring their pizza in with them, their takeout, their PB&J from home. That's okay to bring into our establishments. And maybe dad wants to have a beer while he has his pizza with his family. We are not a bar. Nicole, who's sitting in the audience right now, is the general manager of Green Bay. She's been brought on from us, and she works in the Wausau Axe House, so she can too tell you that we are a very safe establishment, and drinking is not, that's not what we do. We're an Axe House first and foremost. The having a drink with your pizza, or that corporate event where they have dinner catered in, they all want to have a drink while they're throwing. There is no safety concern. Like I said, it's been over 4.5 years and never an incident. And I surely do not foresee one.
Okay.
Rachel, did you say there was a 2-drink maximum?
So yes, we sometimes certainly other people can have more, like if they're not throwing anymore, you know what I mean? So like you throw for an hour, that's, or 2 hours. So unless you're slamming, which we don't allow, there's just not really any more time to have more than 2 drinks.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mixing alcohol and axes just kind of caught my eye, so that's why I had a few questions.
It's okay to, yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm here. I'm to answer those questions.
I'll make a motion to approve their Class B liquor license for Blade and Boards.
I'll second it.
Perfect. We have a
Thanks,
motion
guys.
and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Just a quick point of clarification. The applicant is applying for a Class B beer license, not a Class B liquor. So I just want to make sure that the approval matches the request of the applicant for the record. I know what you meant, but just want to make sure for the record we know.
Perfect. And this goes
Right,
to Village Board for final approval? Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Action item 7C. Consider, discuss, act on ordinance 07-03-21, amending municipal code section 3-2-92, outdoor areas. And I think that's Tony.
Yes, that's correct. All right, so attached in the packet tonight is a draft ordinance that amends our existing ordinance with respect to outdoor licensed areas or patios. And essentially, throughout the course of the enforcement and review of this ordinance, administration noticed some inconsistencies between subsections 2 and 3 under subsection C as far as the physical requirements. A few years back, there was an ordinance revision that modified the perimeter boundaries and allowing planters, decorative fencing, things of that nature. And then the ingress-egress portion of the ordinance wasn't necessarily clear or consistent with those revisions back at that time a few years ago. So this language proposed in the updated revision really is to provide greater consistency and clarity as far as that perimeter or that boundary, indicate that any outdoor licensed area is the responsibility of the licensee. They are to supervise any ingress and egress consistent with those decorative planters or temporary fencing or whatever is set forth in any approved plan as far as any outdoor licensed area. Now, the committee and the board will retain discretion as far as approval of any outdoor licensed area and whether to grant that. And then the remaining revisions in the ordinance are really just for more grammatical and cleanup and clarity. So with that, that's what the proposed revisions are set forth for tonight with this draft ordinance.
One thought that did come to mind. What happens, is this just for permanent outdoor areas? Because you know how it is being around the stadium, all of a sudden somebody just pops something up and they have an outdoor area where they're, having, or for example, I mean, we always have to get a liquor license for a blast and things like that. That's a temporary, because it's stating in here that you got to have a complete written and visual plan. I'm just thinking, what about these temporary things? Is that also incorporated in here?
It will be for a couple of different ways. One, it will just simply be if it's, say, a picnic license or a special event or something like that. That'll be part of the conditions of approval because they'll be required to submit a plan along with that. And administration, as part of the review and granting of any approval, will ensure that, as well as any sort of other approval that would be necessary. If someone is going to expand their premises, they're going to need to get the committee and board's approval at that time. And so as part of that approval process, this will also come into play there, and then they'll be bound by these requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the amending of ordinance 0703-21, municipal code section 3-2-91 for outdoor areas.
And I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, action item 7D, dangerous animal declaration. Joel.
Okay, thank you. Some of you may recall back earlier this year, the committee held a hearing regarding a dangerous dog declaration for which an animal was declared dangerous in another municipality. In that particular case, it was the city of Green Bay. Under our municipal code, section 4-1-2B4, any animal that's been declared dangerous or vicious, banished, or ordered to be destroyed from any other city, town, village, county, is also declared dangerous in the village of Ashwaubenon. It can be speculated that the legislative intent of that is that we don't want to take somebody else's problem and have it be located in the village of Ashwaubenon. I was requested by the committee and board to gather information from our surrounding municipalities as it relates to their ordinances to see if other communities had that same restriction from the aspect of if it's declared dangerous in another municipality, is it automatically declared dangerous in theirs? What we found is it's kind of a mixed bag. It's probably a 50-50 type situation. But with that being said, staff has had some opportunity to review that from a public safety standpoint. And at this point, we are not recommending any changes to our code. There's a couple reasons for that. Obviously, if an animal is found to be declared dangerous or banished from another community, we don't want to take that inherent risk of allowing them to relocate to the village of Ashwaubenon. Clearly, it went through a process to be declared dangerous, and we don't want to assume that risk until a time of which we can find that dog to be dangerous. The other element is, there was some concern about who should kind of hear the appeal about the banishment from the other municipality. And really, there's an avenue for that dog owner to follow, and that would be through the Circuit Court of Appeals, and basically filing a request through Circuit Court to have their determination appealed through that process. And that the village of Ashwaubenon really shouldn't look or act like the appeals court from another jurisdiction. There's other components to this too. Certainly an animal could, let's say, be up north and be at somebody's cottage and get involved in an incident of which they would be considered declared dangerous. Now that animal could come back to Ashwaubenon because the permanent residence is here. And, those circumstances could arise as well, where the animal may have committed the act of being a dangerous dog in another municipality, but yet it is primary residence here. And in that case, we want to make sure we maintain that element of having that control of the hearing here in Ashwaubenon. So with that, staff is not recommending any changes at this time. We feel that the code is appropriate, provides adequate protection from risk for an animal that may have been declared dangerous. And so at this point, no action is necessary, but we're certainly available to answer any questions.
So I was the one that asked for this to be brought and to look into other municipalities. And I noticed one thing, and maybe in my reading I missed it. A lot of the municipalities have a leash and muzzle requirement. I don't see that in ours. Is that correct? If I remember it. So it seems like if they don't have if the policy has the leash and muzzle requirement, if it seems like it's been deemed dangerous in another, I'm saying this really poorly. If they do not have the part that says if it's been deemed dangerous in another city, it cannot come to their village or their municipality. It seems like the way they manage the situation is if a dog has been deemed dangerous, they have the leash and muzzle requirement. Does that make sense? And so I guess I'm wondering why, I guess we maybe don't go down that route instead of potentially, and the way I'm reading it, and I will be honest, I'd have to read it even more. The way I'm reading most of the leash and muzzle is the homeowner can still keep the dog if it's attached to a leash of XYZ length with the person at all times and has a muzzle if in a public area. So I guess I'm wondering, I see that in a lot of these and notice we don't have that. So wondering the thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I would have to quite honestly bring that back to see if anybody has historical knowledge as to why that is not a component of our existing code. We do have leashing and muzzling requirements pending the outcome of the declaration determination. But beyond that, as far as a permanent, if you will, permanent solution to or an alternative to banishing the dog from the village, that is not a current component of our code. So again, that's a new question that I would kind of have to go back to determine what the opinion is from staff as to why that wasn't included in the current code. I would, again, just be speculating by giving you an answer at this point.
Well, I think I wouldn't have even known that other municipalities had that unless we did what we did and looked at some others. And I'm not saying I'm necessarily for it and that we should put it in. I'm just trying to think of, a situation where, it is as, I don't know, the best way that maybe the dog can age and not have to get banished because they work perfectly fine in their family and maybe they don't have to be completely removed from the home. That's, I guess the heart in me, the animal lover in me, sees that other municipalities do that, and I also understand that there's no way to monitor that and make sure that it's always being followed. So I guess I'd be curious to see the chief's point of view on it, and maybe just again, if there is a historical reason why we don't have that option to find a way to work and keep the animal potentially in its home. And again, I'm not saying I'm necessarily for that, but seeing that other municipalities have that, I'd be curious.
Just one point of note, and I agree with Joel. I'm not sure on what the history is either in that regard, but just to indicate or make the committee aware of, we do have an ordinance that prohibits animals from running at large within the village. So basically, a person shall ensure that their dog really stays on their own property, has to be within their immediate presence and control of the owner. or the keeper. So that ordinance does exist that may address a little bit of that leashing, and it doesn't necessarily have obviously the muzzling requirement, but that is an additional ordinance that is in place and may go a little bit to that point. So just want to make the committee aware of that as well.
Yeah, and in my scanning, I noticed some of them said like a 4-foot leash, a 6-foot leash. It could not be attached to an inanimate object. Sometimes it didn't necessarily specify. So it could be attached to a tree, or it couldn't be attached to a tree, or whatever. I'm just curious. I mean, like I said, it's not necessarily our top priority, but just trying to think of ways. And I'll try to do my own research as well. And again, if it ends up that we don't make a change, I'm going to trust that we make the right decision for the village, but I'm still curious, I guess, to see if there's any situation, I guess, where this could potentially.
I'd like to ask you, if we remove this provision that if it's dangerous somewhere else, now we can have them here, is this village going to be any way liable for removing that provision?
That's probably a better question for our village attorney, but
I don't think there's a clear answer to that. I think, as I always indicate, people can always sue anybody for anything. Unfortunately, that's the nature of our system. The issue is going to be what may be looked at as far as, I guess what there's going to be is a potential balancing of legislative immunity. So if something does come forward and the committee and board makes a decision, there is a layer of immunity. But then that's just simply an issue that can be litigated, and you're still in a lawsuit trying to have a contested decision made on that issue. The other thing that may complicate it as well is when you look at liability, the concern is always whether the village is on notice of something. And so if they're on notice that this animal has been declared dangerous by another community, then that indicates the village was on notice, didn't really do arguably anything to prevent that from being exposed to another incident, which they could do that. So it's possible. I think the chances are remote. I don't think there's a clear answer. Those are some of the challenging questions that would would come up or be presented as far as that sort of a situation or scenario. Like I said, I think it would be remote as far as liability, but there still is that risk, and it's still also an issue that would need to be litigated and determined by a court at some point.
Well, and I would say too, if we potentially look at maybe adding, and again, this is all hypothetical, I'm not suggesting anything at all, but if we looked at the possible option of adding a leash and muzzle requirement, then I would say let's keep, if it's been deemed dangerous by another municipality, that's fine. We can keep that in the ordinance, but maybe, okay, it's been deemed dangerous by Green Bay. We now are aware it's being brought into Ashwaubenon and their primary residence and they're moving. So now we say, we're not going to rehear it. You can keep the dog, but you have to follow these guidelines, which would be the leashing and the muzzling. I would say, if we went down that route, I would say we would not have to remove it from the policy if it was deemed by another city. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, not our top priority, I know, but maybe just something, and again, I'll do a little more research myself because I'm the one asking the questions, but maybe just worth continuing to put it on the back burner and just as it comes up or as we look at it. That's all I'd ask.
I know the situation that happened was kind of sad because, to be honest, in my mind, it was a neighbor that basically was stalking them.
And that's the thing.
And that's why I agree that it was kind of sad that, we're almost kicking them out of Ashwaubenon because of that situation. And I think they needed to go back to circuit court and push that there. I believe that's what they needed to do to ultimately get it resolved.
And I would agree. I don't want us to be the appeals court.
Right.
That's not our point. That's not if I saw that every other municipality had the same type of ordinance, I would say, all right, I don't necessarily like it, I guess I would say, but I'm trusting that other people know better than I, and I will follow it. And then I just saw that leashing and muzzling and didn't know if that was an addition that could be done and not necessarily take anything out, just look to see if there's another avenue. So, yeah, and I agree, I don't want to be the appeals court. That's not our place, but is there something?
I think what we'll do is we'll round up with staff and I'll speak with public safety to see what concerns or maybe try to find some history behind how the code is written or what the purposes were behind the code.
Okay,
And then we can report back to committee at that point.
okay. And I would say, like, if it's not next meeting, that's okay. If you have other fish to fry, that's okay. It's just something I'd like to kind of keep just continuing, so. All right. So no action right now, but further clarification. Okay. So moving on to number 8, discussion on August meeting date. I don't know what this means.
So the third, when we're supposed to meet, is National Night Out. So most of the trustees are taking that. So we were wondering whether or not the following Tuesday on the 10th would work for you guys at 5:30?
I don't see why not. Works. Assuming we have 2 other members as well, but
I think that'll work. I think
Okay.
that'll work there.
It probably won't be 5:30 because we'll probably have planned board before this. So it'll be the normal time at 6:30.
Okay.
Okay.
no, that's
That'll-
fine.
that'll-
Let's go ahead and make that adjustment, and you'll send out the normal meeting reminders
I'll
that you
make sure
normally
we
do.
Have a quorum. Yeah.
Perfect. Number 9, items for next agenda. Kind of already discussed one, but if any of the public have any items, please reach out to the village office. If there are no other, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned.